Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging our brands here of the former WNST Sports, along with all of our Baltimore Positive conversations over the last couple of years, almost 300 conversations now. We will be merging them. Also want to give shout out to our sponsors at the Harker for sending us delicious summer ice cream, including the pistachio, which I ran out of. I eat it all, which is I probably should drink the water out of this, as well as our friends at Royal Farms and Chicken Palooza going on this month, 10 cents from every box going to Johns Hopkins Children's Center. I tell you what, I've had a lot of causes around here over the course of time, and my wife's leukemia, and there goes my hero and all the things that we've done over years. But this COVID thing, and I guess 5-6 months into this now, I've done sports for a living. Baseball's back. Football's trying to come back. They're playing hockey in an ice locker up in Toronto right now. But music is the thing that I miss the most. I put a little benign piece up on Facebook a couple of months ago saying, yeah, I miss baseball and I miss sports, and it sucked that we didn't have March Madness. But what I really miss is like sitting in Merriweather on the lawn for like a Robert Plant show or something like that. And the things we had tickets for this summer, whether it was Rod Stewart and Cheap Trick and all these things that were happening, not happening. And Audrey Schaefer has been my friend for a long, long time. And I was going to the 9:30 when it was the old 9:30, the new 9:30. And then we got Anthem and all of these other things and getting involved in Merriweather. I want to welcome her in on the Zoom line here from a really cool – I got to get a green screen as cool as you have, Audrey, down there in D.C. But I saw your piece in the Washington Post. We're Facebook friends. I know your politics. We've been involved in things, and I love the anthem, and I've seen Save Our Stages. And I wanted to give you as much oxygen as I can to discuss what you're trying to do, because when this – nightmare is over with and we all survive this, I need to be able to come back to Anthem. I need to be able to come back to the 9:30. I need to get those delicious meatballs that I found at the place across the street from you down there in the new place. And I need to get back to Merriweather, where I've been going for 35 years, almost 40 years since I was a kid. Welcome on. Let's help you. Let's get people involved here, because the experiences that I talk about are not just my experiences. They're the rich experiences that we've all had through a lifetime with music.
It is. And like you, I miss it desperately. There are times it sounds a little bit bizarre, but when the Facebook memory will pop up in the morning and I see it's a clip of a show that I had taken at one of our venues, and I watch it for about a minute, partway in, I'm usually in tears because I miss it so much. And obviously the most important thing is health and safety for everybody, and that comes first. And because that comes first, all these independent venues across the country, including ours, we were the first to close and we'll be the last to open. And that's if we're lucky, if we can open. And I say it like that because we've had absolutely no revenue since March. March 11th was our last show. And, but yet we still have enormous overhead. And those bills don't stop, whether it's rent or mortgage, insurance, taxes, utilities, all those are enormous, which normally we can do fine with. But when you have zero revenue, and it's even worse, it's negative revenue, because when the show gets canceled, we refund the money if people ask for it back. Of course we do. So we're at negative revenue. And we became charter members of the National Independent Venue Association in April. It was an organization that didn't exist in March, but we all came together, and now there are 2,500 members that are independent venues and promoters and festivals in every single state in the United States in Washington, D.C. And the fact that we've all come together tells you that something is a huge mess going on. And it's because we knew that pretty quickly, that within a week or two, that there's no way to survive this pandemic as a gathering place business unless there's going to be federal help. And so far, the programs that the federal government has come up with, people might have heard of the Payroll Protection Program, PPP, or the Small Business Administration loans. Unfortunately, they have not worked for small venues. They do work for a lot of other businesses, but the whole premise is to be able to get your employees back and start paying them, and with that money, which would be fantastic, but we're not open, so we don't have our employees. In fact, we've had to furlough about 96% of our employees, which is absolutely heart-wrenching. And it's why we have come together, and we have been lobbying Congress since April to come up with programs that would allow us to survive this, so that we can once again be contributing financial members of our communities, because we're enormous employers. It's not just that we have a lot of fans like you that want to come back. Our employees, of course, want to, the artists do, but there's also the financial contribution that we make to our communities just by our being in business. And what I mean by that is, there was a study out of Chicago that showed for every dollar spent on a ticket at a small venue, $12 of economic activity was generated for area businesses. So,
Well, I just told you, I eat the meatballs at the place across from the 930. I fell in love with that little place.
exactly.
You know, I come down to Anthem and I park up where that Safeway is and I walk down the hill and we make a night of it. We'll stop somewhere. We'll go to Founding Farm, someplace we like in D.C. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's the same as sports, right? I mean, baseball is – I live downtown Baltimore, right? Baseball is stopped. My wife and I walked out to get Indian food last night. It is unbelievable how desolate. You know what I mean? Like that you take 40,000 people out of downtown 80 nights a year when the city was sort of for that, and the aquarium and the things that bring people down leave
Right.
behind a richness of experience for everyone. I never would have been down on that waterfront if your company and Seth didn't take a chance on building that down there. I think I had delicious food about 3 doors down. It had a world, like it was like a Caribbean kind of place that served like world food.
Yeah.
I've been to Anthem 4 or 5 times, and I've always gone down and eaten. And I've had ice cream in your place from Jenny's. You know what I mean? Like, so I get beer in your place, right? Whatever. But there is that experience of like making a night out, and the destination for me and my wife and my son and his wife was Rob Thomas last summer. You hosted us down there for a night. We had a beautiful night together, family night out. God, I miss every part of that, right?
Yeah.
And think that when this is over with, that you won't have the ability to sustain keeping that venue open. And these places don't just open themselves. I just want to do my part in the coming months for all my musician friends, because there's so many, because of what I did for a living 30 years ago, being a music critic. And then just, I'm a sports guy, Audrey, right? Like people would say, well, you got to get baseball back, football back. Baseball's back, and it feels like, and I've used this example with people this week. I said, I had 4 Rolling Stone shows that I missed this summer, and they might not be coming back, right? So I had flights and all of that stuff, and I said, if Mick Jagger called today and said he was going to come and play a special show with Keith for just me and my wife in our condo, and we couldn't video, we can't put it online, but it would really happen, I would say to him, yeah, it sounds awesome, and it sounds memorable, and it sounds incredible, but it sounds to me more like I'd rather see Seth sign you guys to come down and play the anthem and have you shake your ass there, even FedEx Field, which I hate that place, but the parking and all that. The experience of being with people. I can put a DVD on. I can put, Let It Bleed on right now. I can put on the Stones. I have iPod. But there's something about being there. You know what I mean? Like in that, I know, anybody that knows. And when I've never thought of that being taken away from us in this way. And I know as a business, I can't imagine for every one of you. And I go through this list, Audrey, like Red River, Pabst Theater Group, Milwaukee. I've been to the theater there. Chicago Independent Venue League. I've been to those theaters. And the World Cafe up in Philly. These are the places I seek out when I do travel. I'm looking for that anthem in Austin, Texas, and that experience to see the Bodines or a band that I love,
And right now, there's no guarantee that they're going to be here the next time you're able to travel. We did a survey of members of the National Independent Venue Association and found that if the shutdown lasts 6 months or longer, and there's no meaningful federal assistance, 90% of the venues said that they would not be able to reopen. And that's real. And there's to talk to your sports analogy, one thing is very different. And why this association formed is these are mom and pop businesses. These are not owned by billionaires. They're not owned by publicly traded companies. So we don't have stockholders to fall back on, and we don't have enormous Wall Street financial vehicles to pull from either. And that's why this is so important, that the Save Our Stages Act and the Restart Act be implemented once Congress finally gets together, comes to an agreement, and can provide assistance to the hardest hit industries that have no revenue, enormous overhead, and no insight into when they're going to be able to open again. And the good news is that we've gotten a lot of traction among senators and representatives for this, bipartisan, and that's what is so critical right now, is to be able to have that kind of bipartisan support. And
Republicans like music too.
But it's not just about the music. Yes, humans like music, no matter, it's just something that's in our souls. It might be different music, but that's not the thing. What is completely bipartisan is wanting to keep these businesses alive, because they know what we do for their downtown and the foot traffic that we provide, and the fact that we become the tourist destinations for people to fly in. You can't have Nashville and New Orleans have all the music places fold and then be Nashville and New Orleans. It just isn't going to happen. So here's what's really important, that when people go to saveourstages.com and let their elected officials know that they care about their independent venues and want us to be able to be held over until we are able to open safely. And the other is to tell Congress they've got to act now. And it's not just about us, but it's about a lot of other small businesses that are on the ropes right now, and a lot of American citizens that are unemployment through no fault of their own, that probably have never been on unemployment before, but and their unemployment has run out and their protections for eviction have run out. So America's hurting, and we need the adults to get back in the room and come up with an agreement so that we can start to come back. And right now, the harm that's being done it's heartbreaking. Clubs are closing every single day, and it doesn't have to be like that. We've never had our hand out before, because we've always been able to figure it out. When the recessions come or national tragedies come, we were able to recalibrate, turn around, pivot, and figure out our business. But this is something, it's like the legal terminology of eminent domain, when for the greater good, the government decides that the highway has to go through your backyard, so they take your property and they pay you fair market value. Well, for the greater good, for health and public safety, which we totally get, the government has effectively taken our businesses, and they're leaving us hang out to dry right now, because the existing programs that they've put out have not worked for us. We wish they had, but they don't. And so if anybody can pick up the phone and call their senator or their congressperson and say, pressure leadership to come up with a deal, number one, and number two, save our stages and restart.
Save Our Stages is the place to go. Audrey Schaefer is our guest here from the 930 Club, as her shirt says, and Anthem and IMP. And, I'm familiar with Seth's story and, little theater and throwing parties and finding myself as a young man when the drinking age was 18 in Washington, D.C. many, many moons ago, going down to the old 930 Club and then finding a new home in an area that, quite frankly, and I think I've told you this, I tell Seth, 20 years ago when you guys opened the new 930, the neighborhood was so threatening to me that there were times I'd say, do I really want to see that band or whatever? They felt that way to me as a Baltimorean. Now, I live in the city where everybody's threatened to come into downtown, and I live in the middle of that. And I see what you have done to that neighborhood. That I took my wife down there about 2 years ago because, my wife battled a couple of years, didn't go out and do a whole lot. She hadn't been to D.C. in a couple of years. And we came down to the 930 maybe a year and a half ago, and she didn't recognize it because she hadn't been there in that long a period of time. And when you talk about changing neighborhoods, you don't talk about it. You were a part of it. You lived it, going in and being a part of a true urban renaissance, and then duplicating that again with Anthem. But I want to give you a little oxygen because a couple of things. First off, what you've done here with Save Our Stages, and I'm looking on this site, NIVA, National Independent Venue Association. It really is amazing to me how, the music industry, and I'm wearing a funny, nasty bitch shirt from the Vinyl HBO show, and, it was sort of the cocaine-fueled 70s music sort of scene from 50 years ago and all of that stuff.
I
And
think we
50
should
years
change
later,
shirts.
what's that?
I think I want to trade shirts. I want your shirt.
This is a killer shirt,
I
right? It's a
didn't mean
great
to
shirt.
interrupt you,
Great
but I
show.
think I should wear that.
I
But go
love that
ahead.
shirt. And I got it because of Nasty Nestor and because of Mick Jagger's kid and the band and all that.
Right.
For me, with music and how far it's come and how many venues I've gone in, and I don't need to tell you, you're an old rock and roll person like me, where you went to a club 25 years ago to see a band in a certain city, and maybe that club's still there, or maybe it's the Bayou and it's not anymore, or
Right.
maybe it's moved like the 930 Club and they're calling it something different, or maybe it got taken over by one of the big outfits, or it's been refurbished, or maybe it's been bulldozed like Hammerjacks in my town, right? Or maybe it's just a bar where they just serve beer now, like Max's on Broadway, where I used to see, the Smashing Pumpkins in Fells Point, right? 30 years ago when I was a music critic. But the notion that the venues, the artists, the bands, that they come and go, and Seth is still here and you're still here and I'm still here as a ticket buyer or whatever, but that there really hasn't been like sort of an organized thing until there's been a tragedy to say, how do we put the belly up in San Diego and Solana Beach, where I've been with the 930, with the Anthem, with the clubs, the First Avenue in Minnesota, where I, tried to see Prince 30 years ago. The fact that you guys would all know each other because you're all sort of booking the same bands with the same, promote different things, that this would bring you together to save it all these years in. And there's something very Hunter Thompson about that, Audrey. I got to be honest with you, right?
None of us knew each other, almost none. And it was a desperate situation of understanding that we will go under if we don't come together. And a handful of us got on a phone call and someone said, hey, you're in DC, you must know a lobbyist. And a couple of other people, there were about 6-8 of us on a phone call. And then we ended up interviewing lobbyists and went with them and started this association. We did not know each other in March. By April, we now have this enormous movement that has, it's not just that we've come together, we've been able to get 3 pieces of legislation introduced on the House and Senate floor, which is coming from an organization that didn't exist, is absolutely mind-blowing. We've had 1.6 million emails sent to elected officials telling them, please, this is important. We need you to take a look at this because we want our independent venue to survive this, and only you can help.
With you, one of the things I did reach to you because I thought of you, and I've been friends with Gene Parker my whole adult life. And, Amanda Peyton Julian is still my Facebook friend 35 years later, and just sent me, oh my God, if I weren't wearing my pajamas, I swear I would just take a break because they're right there. I can reach them. She sent me all the programs from the 80s and 90s, back when I was a music critic, with all the listings of the bands and the Jackson Browns and the Grateful Deads and people that were playing at Merriweather. And I have such an affinity for that and for all of this. But I started to reach to my rock and roll buddies who are home and unemployed and passing a cup or doing a live stream or a Zoom. My buddy Ed Lauer and Jason Seymour playing over at the roof at Admiral's Cup. I went to see Tommy Conwell up in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago for these outdoor socially distanced things. We heard about these drive-in theaters and different things that you can do. It would feel to me that every artist that's ever walked into the 930, and I either see Patti Smith or Chrissy Hynde behind you. And I know the last time I was in the 930 was to see the Pretenders and Chrissy Hynde. I remember that. Took my wife. So that's true. So I think that's Chrissy Hynde over your right shoulder, but it might be Patti Smith. I'm not sure. But either way,
over my right shoulder.
That's fine. Well, and Springsteen's above all of it. But for you with the musicians themselves, where are the musicians in all of this that Dave Grohl would want to come on my show and everybody's show, and every artist would want to say, I need the Belly Up to be there, and I need, when I get to Denver, I need the Ogden to be there because I went to the Ogden 2 years ago to see to see a show in Denver. I just think of these places that, how do I go back to Denver and there's no Red Rocks? How do we 3 years from now get through this and somehow, some way, Merriweather's not? I can't. I would think every musician would want to sign up to do every single thing they can do because they need you as much as I need you, more than I need you.
Well, it's what was really wonderful is that 600 artists, we got together and they did write a letter to Congress on our behalf. And that's on our website as well. And it was from Dave Grohl and Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett. I say from Billie Eilish to Billy Porter to Billy Joel and everybody in between. We had Amy Schumer and Jeff Foxworthy. I'm just giving you off a
June
snap.
18th. The letter's up here. All
Right.
the autographs are up here.
Yeah.
It's really kind of neat to look at and see it in this form.
Yeah. The reason why it doesn't take a lot to explain to them why we're important, because they know that this is where they make 75% or more of their living is by touring. And there's going to be a day when hopefully they'll be able to get off their couch and get on a tour bus and start driving through America. And it would be added to the tragedy if so few of us are left that they have to bypass towns. And they also know that these small venues are where they get their start. It's where you don't get tomorrow's stars unless you have today's small independent venues. Lady Gaga started a place called The Bitter End in New York. And it's like a 250 capacity place. And they're on the brink. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Breaking. I talked to the owner, Paul Rizzo. He's owned it since 93. It's been around since 1960. And he was like, Audrey, I had to do a GoFundMe. It was the most humiliating thing of my life. And I told him, Paul, I said, everybody's got to do what they have to do at a time like this. He said, but I've always been able to figure it out. He said, I lived through 9/11 and disco. I should be able, yeah, I should be able to get through this, but we cannot. This is the one time that we cannot. But yeah, artists want to keep us alive. I just had.
Well, I saw David Byrne of Baltimore. We love the. We're from Baltimore. We adopt Kicks. We adopt Tupac. We adopt Cisco. Let's see. We got Rick Ocasek, who the late great. So we have a few Baltimore people, but David Byrne's one of those people, and I know he was out on the front of this, and he had an incredible production this last year, and went out and the Broadway thing and all of that. I love seeing that. I love seeing the faces come to life and say, this is important for everyone. And, I just want to jump up and down and scream about it because I need you there. And whatever I can do. Save Our Stages is the way to do this. Audrey Schaefer is our friend from the 930 Club and Anthem. Go ahead, say that again.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your eyeballs on this.
Well, I might not be done with you yet. I mean, you got to just share me some old Killers videos and all the stuff that you put out on Facebook. But I, like you, have been to a concert every day of my life, right? Like all 365 days, I have a ticket stub with a date on it. Back on July 31st, I realized that I had seen the Styx Paradise Theater tour at the Baltimore Civic Center, and I'm like, I'm going to find my ticket because I remember going with my mother that day, and I found the ticket and I put up. So this is all we got right now. Is this
our
right?
Memories, it's our heart. It's the shows I went to see with my kids. The shows I went to see with my mom.
What was your first concert?
Well, my mom, I grew up in the New York area till I was 14, and we lived outside of the city in the suburbs, but my mom was a huge blues and jazz and Broadway fan. And she would drive me into the city, and she taught me from the time I was a little girl, honey, you have to go to the worst parts of town to see the best music. And we would go to places like the Blue Note, and she would take me in, and then there would be people, they would have an intermission, and somebody from inevitably from the band would come off the stage and come to, well, let us.
Audrey, you're breaking up on me. Say that again. I want to make sure we get that because I missed the punchline. Go ahead.
I don't know the exact first, but what comes to mind is getting to see people like Alberta Hunter and Nina Simone and Carmen McRae and those types of artists, Tito Puente. So not very rock and roll, but just really heartfelt blues and jazz. And as I got older, we moved down to the DC, Baltimore area, and my mom took me to see a show, and she became friends with the bassist who ended up being the bassist for Ella Fitzgerald. And so she was, from the time I was a very little girl, that's who I wanted to grow up and be, was Ella Fitzgerald.
Wow.
If you had told me if you were going to be reincarnated, who would you be? In a second, it would have been Ella Fitzgerald. The only problem is I can't sing for anything. And so that's a problem. It sounds really good until it comes out of my mouth, and then it's just awful.
Well, I couldn't play baseball well
So
enough to play, so I decided to talk about it instead. So
there you
we
go.
both fell into it.
So, but my taste in music keep changing because I'm not somebody who likes to listen to what I listened to in high school and college. I've got to always find something new. I've got to keep changing. To me, music is like, if your favorite book, I'm not going to reread my favorite book all the time.
There's nothing better than finding a band that's your band, right?
Yeah.
Like, so even all these years later, you know, Live and the Black Crowes, some of those bands that I wrote about with Smashing Pumpkins, and they became big bands. There's a band called Duran Jones and the Indications that my wife and I fell in love with a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
And we actually, the last show we saw before COVID, we saw them at the Brooklyn Bowl in New York, in Brooklyn, and I had legitimate New York pizza. Took the subway, and, you know, we went to a little club and saw this sort of throwback bluesy Marvin Gaye. That music's kind of coming back a little bit, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's some bands doing that sort of blue-eyed soul thing going on, and you know, what's old is new again, but we need to get them open, you open, everybody open, so we can get back, and I can come down to Anthem and see the Killers and see Rob Thomas and anything else you guys got up your sleeve. And I wish my story were as good as Ella Fitzgerald. You know, I saw Sean Cassidy at the Civic Center. I don't tell people that, but I saw Styx. Styx was my first. Like, I saw the Cornerstone tour in February of '80. And the Babies were supposed to open up, but they were kind of breaking up and things weren't going right. So, but Styx, you know, so I saw Queen was my second show. Is that cool?
Oh, my God.
To say that I saw Freddie Mercury at the Civic Center in the summer of '80.
Never got to see them. I'm so jealous.
And I got my ticket stub. It's red. Yeah, so I still have it.
I mean, I got to see it with Adam Lambert, and I was like, oh, nobody could do Freddie Mercury, but Adam Lambert was fabulous. Saw him both times.
Paul Rogers did a nice job with it too. You know, I'm a big Paul Rogers guy. So
okay, I wasn't ready to see somebody else take Freddie Mercury's place when he was doing it. But
he didn't try to take his place. They were doing Bad Company songs.
Yeah,
it's more, you know.
Yeah, I just wasn't ready. So I have a tip for you. This artist, he's out of a tiny little town called Chihuahua, Washington, which is by Seattle. And his name is Alan Stone, ALLENSTONE. And how I describe him to people is, he looks like Napoleon Dynamite, but he sounds like Stevie Wonder. And not only does he have an amazing gift with his voice and songwriting, he's just such a top A human too.
Okay, well, I am. I'm on the page right now. 33-year-old from Chihuahua, Washington.
Yeah.
Blue-eyed soul, contemporary R&B. See, if I hang out with you, I'm gonna learn about better music. That's what I need to have you on the show more often. Give me tips.
Okay, sounds good. And I'll learn more about sports. I'm a huge baseball fan, but
your team won last year. That's why. So yes, I mean it happens.
No. Well, no, that just made it.
We don't talk about that in Baltimore. We don't talk.
No, I'm weird. I just love the game. I would watch any team play. It doesn't matter to me who's playing.
Well, you're lucky. It's back on now every night, and it's silent, and you can enjoy it, and I can enjoy it. But we can enjoy is a night on the lawn with an ice cold beer at Merriweather, and we're hoping to get back to that. So, Audrey, thanks for being such a great guest, and don't be a stranger. And you know, my door's your door, mi casa, su casa, the whole deal. Seth, anybody in your team, I'm going to bother Jean and see if she wants to come on and tell some old stories. I think the more light we can shed on this, the better it would be. And the more people that know that you guys need help, the better it is.
Thank you so much. You be well. Take care.
Keep the beer cold down there. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to Anthem, all right?
You got it.
There she goes, Audrey Schaefer. She's my Facebook friend. She is at the 930 Club and IMP and Anthem and Merriweather Post Pavilion and all those great places that we go and spend money and have memories. And, you know, if we could bring back the stages, maybe we can bring back ticket stubs. I want my ticket stubs back. I need ticket stubs.
Oh, you know what? Here's something to know.
Go ahead.
You could always get them at the box office the night of. Even if you have
You'll print me a ticket stub?
Yeah. All you have to do is ask.
Good. I can put that under glass and be an old guy and collect them. Like I have 10,000 of them.
I think people love it. It's the best souvenir.
You want to feel something, you know? You want to feel it a little bit.
You want to look back on it and say, oh, I remember who I was with. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my 9:30 ticket stubs from back in the 80s with Lenny Kravitz. There you go.
Oh, my gosh.
Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and anywhere you are. We're merging WNST.net with Baltimore Positive together at AM 1570. Stay with us.